So this is three-point editing in Premiere and a number of other processes and techniques that you need to really kind of have good editing practice. Now, again, the basic workflow here is that we start with a clip. We start with a clip in our project, we load it up, we select something from it, and then we bring it down onto the timeline. Now, the quick way of doing it is to drag something down to the timeline. This is called, unsurprisingly, drag to timeline editing. Now this is fine if you only have one or two clips that you need to get down onto the timeline, or if you have a short edit, or for example if you know that your clips need to be sat on top of each other in the timeline for overlaying or compositing or something like that. It's fine to just drag things down onto the timeline. Now when you're getting into longer story-based editing, then you need to start working with what's called three-point editing. Now, three-point editing is a technique used to get stuff down onto the timeline, but using a very particular way of doing it that requires at least 3 points to do it. Now, you might ask yourself, well, what is a point? Well, a point can be a number of things. A point can be the position of the playhead within a clip. That can be referred to as a point. An in point can be a point, naturally, and similarly an out point can be a point. Now this is just giving you a few examples of different pieces of information that you might be required to have to do a three-point edit, and you need to have at a minimum 3 of these bits of information or points to do what you need to do. Now the most basic one is to do an insert edit, and an insert edit simply means that you're going to insert something on the timeline. Now up here on the viewer you can see your clip, you can see your in and your out. You also have a number of buttons here. These ones will navigate to and fro, go to in point, go to out point, play, go one frame, go back one frame. These ones here are for marking your in and your out. Now, the ones over here allow you to perform operations, and the two most common ones that you'll find yourself doing are called insert and overwrite, and I'm going to demonstrate the two now just so that we can see exactly what's going on. Now the way that these buttons work is that they are used instead of dragging something to the timeline. Now you can also use the shortcut that pops up there for each one of these, and probably over time if you keep at the editing you'll find yourself using shortcuts more and more. Okay, so what does an insert edit do? Well, an insert edit takes 3 points, in this case an in point and an out point on my my source clip, or my incoming clip I might call it, because it's going to be coming into my timeline. And the third point that it's going to take in this case is the position of the playhead. So when I insert this clip onto the timeline, it's going to look at points 1 and 2 to tell me how much of the clip is going to be inserted, and at this point is going to tell it where on the timeline it's going to go. So this is one way that an insert will happen. So I click insert and it's inserted onto the timeline. Okay, so it's very straightforward. We have nothing else in the timeline, so it just kind of basically places it there at the top of the timeline. Now let's say, for example, that I have another clip, and this time I'm not as concerned about how much of my clip that I choose. I'm more concerned with how much of my timeline gets filled with a shot. So in this case I'm going to look at my 3 points in a different way. I'm going to right click here and clear in and out just to get rid of my in and out points, and down here in the timeline I'm going to hit I. Whoops, I need to select my timeline first. Hit I at the end of this clip here, go out a few seconds, hit O for out, and now I've got a portion of my timeline. I've got points 1, 2, and now I've got a third point here, or I could put an in point here if I wanted, to say points 1 and 2 on the timeline tell me how much of the timeline needs to have the clip inserted, and point 1, the in point here, basically tells Premiere where the clip needs to start when it gets put down on the timeline. Okay, so when I do an insert now, you'll see that it inserts using this to tell Premiere start the clip now, but only run the clip the duration that I had between my in and my outs. So that's an example of 3-point editing using the insert edit working in two different ways by placing those points in different positions on my incoming clip and on the destination tracks. Now, insert is a particular type of edit called a ripple edit. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to the edit point between my first clip and my second clip. Now, just for the sake of clarity, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete these two clips and I'm going to follow my own naming here, and I'm going to start with clip A, and I'm going to run through that again. So clip A has an in and out and a third point on the timeline. I'll insert that and it places it at that point on the timeline. Clip B, cheetah, I'm going to clear the in and out, and instead of using an in and an out here, I'm just going to use an in point. So this is one point, and here on the timeline I'm going to place an in and then a few seconds later an out, so that it will start the clip here but only insert it between these 2 points here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get clip C, and clip C is going to be inserted between clip A and clip B. Now when I say that the insert edit is a ripple edit, what that means is that when I place something here in between clips, it's not going to damage or overwrite or cover any of the clips that it's being placed on top of. Instead, what it's going to do is it's going to push clip B down the timeline or ripple the timeline to make room for the incoming clip. So clip C, I have an in point, I'll create an out point. Now I'm going to navigate to the previous edit, or the edit point between clip A and clip B here, by using the up arrow. And the up arrow will bring the playhead exactly one edit point up the timeline. The down arrow will bring it the opposite direction. So now I've got points 1, points 2 and points 3, and I can do an insert. Now if you watch when I do the insert, what happens to the edit point between clip A and clip B? It maintains clip A, it maintains clip B, but pushes clip B down the timeline to make room. So it's a ripple edit. Now, that brings us on to the next type of edit, and I'll just undo that edit there. Now, what I have now is I've got same clip coming in point, out point, points 1 and 2. Point 3 is the playhead on the timeline. Now the next type of edit I can do is an overwrite edit. Now the name kind of gives it away. This isn't going to ripple the timeline. This isn't going to allow clip B to move down to make way so that all clips are included. This is going to place the incoming clip on top of B and overwrite it. So this is a destructive, not to put a negative term on it, but that's the term for it. This actually is going to be destructive in the sense that it will delete whatever is directly, whatever it replaces, and that clip is then gone from the timeline. So insert and overwrite are two very common ways of bringing content from the viewer or from your project panel through the viewer and down onto the timeline.